Hi, I'm Eddie of Eddie's Reef Aquarium. Today's video, more or less, you can tell, I'm going to add sand to the Nuvo-40. But before I do it, and I do the demonstration of how I'm going to do it, which this time I'm going to do it different than the other previous reef tanks that I've had. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and wash the actual sand to eliminate the amount of cloudiness when you go ahead and apply any of these sands, and then when you put the water you have to wait X amount of time for that cloudiness to go down. So today I'm gonna do a different technique when it comes to the Nuvo-40. Like I've mentioned before, if you follow me on other videos, there's a lot of things that I'm going to do different on this tank, and I'm going to see if I can do it a smart type of tank, with Wi-Fi incorporated in it and all that. But now going back to the topic. As you notice, I have some items here. Well, what I'm going to use is I'm just going to use this container, whatever you want to call it, a basin or whatever, and I'll be getting the sand and just dumping it there and washing it. But again, I'm going to demonstrate it. But before, I do want to go over some topics and concerns that other fellow hobbyists or people trying to get into the hobby, they go to different pet shops or they have friends that have reef tanks. And like I've mentioned before on one of my previous videos, that when it comes to this hobby, there's tons of hundreds of millions of ways to actually set up an aquarium, a reef aquarium, and to maintain it. You go to one place and they tell you one thing, then you go to the other one and they tell you another thing, and it can drive you nuts. And then this is just a recap of my previous videos. And what I do suggest is go by the reef tank that any of these individuals or let's say pet shops, LFS, have. Although the LFS, you have to be a little careful because you have to note that that's their marketing image. So they're going to have all these employees and even the owners before they open the doors cleaning everything and scraping the bottom and taking out any dead animals that were there. And then when you come in, wow, So that's a little factor that you have to incorporate when you go to your local LFS. But what I've always said, and I maintain this, is go by the reef tank of the person that's giving you the information. And if their reef tank looks beautiful, outstanding, or average, then go by that technique. But don't ever, this is a rule of thumb, and I stress it as strongly as I can. Don't ever try to use like a part of a technique or a school of thought that one person says or an LFS says, then incorporate half of that or part of it and then use another LFS or a person's technique or school of thought. What happens is when you mix these types of school of thoughts, you're headed for a disaster, because then one way is being incorporated with part of another way. So that's, I should say, a disclaimer or the intro of this topic. Now, before I start, I want to bring up another topic when it comes to the sand beds. I know that most of you have gone out to LFS, or you see YouTube videos and you see bare bottoms and you see like this tank that I'm about to introduce the sand. Bare bottoms, there's nothing wrong with them, and sand beds, there's nothing wrong with them, except when it comes to sand beds, if you use a deep sand bed, like 3 or 4 inches of depth of sand, you might run into trouble because it's susceptible to getting like pockets of toxins, of nitrates or nitrites. And if, God forbid, if you disturb the sand, you try to clean it, and that goes to the surface, your water can become toxic. And you might lose some animals, and yet you might not. So what I prefer, now this is me, Eddie, talking about in reference to, like I told you before, follow just one technique. You don't have to follow what I'm about to explain or do. But this is Eddie. This is me talking the way that I do things. What I do is I prefer, let's say cosmetically, to put some sand. I do not ever put deep sand bed. What I usually do is put like a inch worth of sand, maybe a little more, just for cosmetically purposes. Matter of fact, if you look at any of these videos, if now I'm not talking of like the hobbyist videos, but ocean videos. And if you yourself, if you go out to the ocean and you go snorkeling or scuba diving, you'll see that there's no such thing as a bare bottom. This is only in the hobby. So that's why I try to keep it as natural as possible to the real thing. And also adding and building up on that, a lot of other hobbyists and people that are really authoritative figure on this, they will say that all hobbyists, when it comes to keeping reef tanks, they try to mimic and to keep it as close as the actual sea when it comes to parameters, alkalinity, pH, and so forth. So again, what I do is I do on all my tanks that I've set up, put sand to mimic and to make it as, shall we call it, as possible as the actual sea. If you were to go, like I said before, if you were to go snorkeling or scuba diving, you're not going to see a bare bottom with corals growing on the bottom and all that. On the bottom, you're going to see sand. So that's what I try to do. Another topic that I want to bring up again before I do the demonstration is when it comes to raising or not raising your substrate, your corals. I've gone to LFS that they say, well, you should go ahead and raise the rocks, your aquascape. By that, you can either put egg crate or you can put base rocks. Again, talking me, Eddie, I do not do that. I never have. There's a school of thought that they say that if, like, let's say this rock, these are Pucani rocks. If this was a live rock, they say that if you go ahead and you bury it in the sand, if you're using sand, if you bury it, well, if you were to take out the rock at a certain time limit, you are going to see that the bottom part is dead. It's not going to be live. It's going to be dead because, of course, it didn't receive any nutrients, lights, etc., etc. And then that school of thought says that, therefore, because of that, you're going to build up ammonia, and your ammonia is going to spike up a bit, and you shouldn't do that. Again, when it comes to dry rocks, which is what I've used on the 9-gallon, and I'm going to use this prior to this, and all the years that I've been in this hobby, which is, I'd say, 25 or 27 years in the hobby, I have always used live rocks. I have never experienced, yes, I have experienced, I will admit that if I took the rock out, yeah, you're going to see it's shaded, it's lighter. In other words, that area is dead. But I have checked my parameters, I check them every so often, and I have never seen ammonia spikes to a dangerous level, or even any trace of ammonia, not unless if you're overfeeding, let's say your fish, and then your nitrous will go up, your ammonia might go up, but when it comes to, because of the live rock, I have never experienced that in my life. I'm not saying that it's wrong not to do that, but it's just my personal Eddie's Reef Aquaria experience when it comes to me setting up these tanks. And before we go to the process, one final thing. When I go ahead and I put sand, I always make sure that the rocks, the aquascape, is all the way firm to the bottom. Whether the bottom is, if you want to raise it, if it's, let's say, egg crate or base rock. Why do I say that? By experience, been there, done that. In previous years that I have had reef tanks, what I would do is I would first get the tank, put the salt water, put the sand, let the sand clear up, and then I would go ahead and put the rocks inside and do my aquascape, etc., etc. Well, you're risking an issue with that, and I'll tell you why. If you happen, like here, I have two rocks from Pucani, like I said before. let's say that this green mat is your sand, and I just go ahead and put it on top, and then I go ahead and put this other rock and other rocks. God forbid, if with time, either if you get a goby or any other fish or crabs or something that start to burrow or to dig, and let's say that the rock tends to tilt, to go in a little, to sink, your aquascape might, you know, uh, receive an issue. It might avalanche down or move because the rocks, the base rocks on the bottom, one tend to sink down, and it might cause the upper rocks that are the aquascape that are on it. If this one was like to go in to see to sink, it might actually cause a situation where the rock on the top might actually fall or tilt better, causing an issue. So you want to try to avoid that. So therefore, what I do is that, like as you see on the other videos that I've done, and if you can, here, let me take this off. If you can probably see it there, I have them. I don't use egg crate, or I don't, in other words, I don't elevate them, and I don't put base rocks. But as you see, I went ahead, and the first thing that I did before I put sand or water, I went ahead and placed the aquascape. And as you noticed in my previous videos, if you follow me, I went ahead and I, with epoxy, I went ahead and on certain key spots, I went ahead and I epoxied them together. And trust me, I've tried to move them and they won't move. So when it comes to that, always try to put your rocks all the way to your base, whether it's the glass, egg crate, or actually base rocks, to try to avoid what I was explaining before, the rock actually sinking a little and falling. Now, you can remedy that in one way. If, let's say, if you just used, no elevation, if you didn't put, let's say, an egg crate, or you didn't put base rock, but here you have the tank, you have the sand, and now you put rocks, okay? Instead of just leaving them there, just go ahead and dig them. Dig them inside, I mean the base ones, the first ones. Dig them until you make sure they are touching the bottom. Then you go ahead and you build your aquascape. So that's basically, I know it was a little boring, long intro, but I thought I felt the need to touch a little bit on these topics so you don't make mistakes that I have previously made, or other reefers that have actually made, or are about to get into the hobby and they don't tell them that, or they say use egg crate, etc., or whatever, or just put them on top. Trust me, I've been there, done that, like I said before, and I'm just explaining these issues so you don't go through issues that I've gone before, or other fellow reefers or aquarists that they have communicated with me and say, look, this happened, and then when I ask questions, I know why. So let's stop the talking, blah, 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 and let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and do a different procedure on this tank that I haven't done on other ones. And I hope you find this video educational, enjoyable. And I'm going to go ahead and do the next process. So here we go. Okay, and here we are at the kitchen. I thought I'd show you what type of sand I'm using, although I've done a video on this. But just a recap, I'm using the Carib Sea Fiji Pink. So now we're going to start. I'm going to open the bag and I'm going to start the procedure so you guys see what I'm actually doing. Hold on. Okay, and here we are. What I'm simply doing is just adding water to almost the whole 20-pound bag is actually here. Now, I didn't mention on my intro the amount that I'm going to use. The formula is 1 pound per gallon. So being 40 gallons, this would be 40 pounds, 2 bags. But remember on my previous videos what I said about when it comes to the footprint and actually the consumption of mass. So because there is a footprint of, let's say, rocks that are on the bottom, it's not completely empty. I mean, on the bottom, it's just what I'm trying to say is it's not just a flat surface with no real estate taken from the glass. So you do have, of course, the aquascaping. So I really don't have to go to 40 pounds. And like I said, that's the standard for a regular sand bed. If you want a deep sand bed, which I do not recommend, then it'd be double that. But since what I'm only doing is actually for cosmetic purposes and also for biological benefits, all I want, like I said before, is just like, let's say 1 inch or 1.5 inches. So I know for sure it'll take this complete bag and maybe like a half of the other bag. So here we go. This is what you basically do have to do. Just put it outside on the yard with a hose, or either here in my case in the kitchen, and just stir it. You see all this white milky water? That's what would actually occur if you were to actually just dump the sand inside the tank and then just apply water. And this is what you see in other videos, or if you have experienced this on other projects, other setups where the water gets cloudy. So we're going to continue to do this until this milky water is completely off. And once you don't see this amount of cloudiness, then that's when we go to the tank, and then I'll show you what I'm actually going to be doing. Okay, now I don't know if you can see this, but what I'm doing is with my 2 hands, I'm like moving it, you see? Keep doing this until that water starts to clear. And there you have it. If you notice the water falling and the sand, the water's clear. See? See the sand? It's clear. So now we're ready to introduce the sand to the tank. And this is the next step that we're going to take. Okay, and here's what I'm going to use. I'm just going to use a regular cup to get it from the container that I have, and then just pour it. I'm going to start from the back forward. A little at a time. Remember, in this hobby, patience is what really counts here. Okay. Now, what you're noticing that I'm doing, I'm creating like a pile here. And then with my hand, I can go ahead and level it off. Now here, I thought I'd stop for a second and show you where I'm at. And then what I'm doing, the process that I'm doing is starting from the back forward. So if you notice, this section right over here, I did that first. I did this over here, and then I'm moving towards the front, and of course, going all the way around the actual back. So this is a shot that I thought I show you guys what I'm doing presently. I'm going from the back and then towards the front. Well, and here it is. This is the final product. As I said, I was going to use maybe a little more. I used like another half of a bag, so total was like 30 pounds. So this is how it looks. Like I said before, I started on the back, went towards the front. I made sure in between there, I would put sand also in here and there. Okay, and then let me give you a shot on the side. And here we are. This would be the right side. More or less, that's the amount that I was telling you guys that I was gonna have, like about an inch and a half. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, hit the thumbs up. And if not, you're welcome to subscribe to my channel, Eddie's Reef Aquaria. And right next to it, as you notice, there's a little bell. If you activate that and your notifications are on, you'll get a notification every time I upload a video. And again, thank you very much. And like I say at the end of every video, happy reefing. Thank you. Bye-bye.